a president's State of the Union to a skeptical nation. Live at the table, Bakari Sellers, Brad Todd, Ken Cuccinelli, Ashley Allison, and Terry Moran. Americans with different perspectives aren't talking to each other, but here they do. Good evening, or should I say good morning for those of us on the East Coast. It is Abby Phillip in Washington, where President Trump just delivered his first State of the Union address of his second term in office. He declared that the United States is winning, despite a nation where a majority disagrees. The speech comes as the White House tries to weather the storms on multiple fronts. The economy is by far the most important issue, and voters are giving him a failing grade. The Supreme Court dealt a major blow to his tariff policy, and he is as unpopular as ever, according to recent polling. The Epstein files, potential Iran strikes, affordability issues, they are all dominating the news cycles. And public opinion of his campaign's signature immigration policies have completely flipped. But tonight, he challenged Democrats on that issue.
So tonight, I'm inviting every legislature to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself.
So that was, in the room, at the very least, the biggest applause line moment from the president's supporters. How does it play back home, I think, becomes the biggest question. Is that going to play the way that I think it plays on the MAGA base? Is it going to be important, or are the other things important?
Well, I wrote down one line above all tonight, and that was when he said, "These people are crazy," in reference to Democrats. It's true that midterm elections tend to cut against the president's party, but in the end, the opposition has a bar to clear. Democrats have to prove they're not crazy, because voters in 2024 said they thought the Democratic Party was too far out of the mainstream. I think Democrats made a mistake in the hall tonight. They didn't all uniformly rise up and cheer the hockey team. They didn't all uniformly rise up and cheer the heroes in the gallery, and they should have stood and clapped with that statement.
Yeah, I mean, I hear it. I think that what people saw tonight was a president. First of all, I think the bar is in hell for Donald Trump. I've said it multiple times. I want to say it again. The president of the United States is aged. He's old. He's incompetent. His subjects and verbs, they fight often. He's not a great orator. I mean, there is nothing comparable to Barack Obama. There's nothing comparable to George W. Bush. There's nothing even comparable to Joe Biden in terms of oratory and what you saw tonight. So that's first. The second thing is, I understand the pomp and circumstance of the State of the Union, but most Americans are beyond that. And look, okay, Democrats didn't stand up for this. They didn't clap for that. I didn't necessarily like Ilhan Omar shouting out during the speech. I mean, but what are we juxtaposing that against? We're juxtaposing that against Renee Good being murdered in the street. We're juxtaposing that against Preddy dying, shot multiple times in the street. So yeah, I get it. Democrats didn't stand up when he said that line. But the fact is, Donald Trump is killing Americans. People are tired of the National Guard in their cities, in their streets. ICE and Border Patrol, Corey Lewandowski, Kristi Noem, incompetent from the top down. So, I mean, I get it. And the showmanship is one thing. But the utter incompetence that people are feeling every day, I think that is what's going to win or rue the day. Rue the day, I think, is the SAT word I'm looking for.
I guess the thing is, everybody knows it's a gotcha moment, right? And it was intended to be that way. But at the end of the day, the president is still very unpopular. He is underwater on the issue of immigration enforcement. And when we asked people who watched the speech what they thought about the speech, 38% said they had a very positive view of what Trump said. That is the worst performance of any president at this stage in their presidency, going all the way back to George W. Bush. So again, moments like this, how much do they matter? And is it smart for Republicans to put so much weight on something like that when other things might matter more to Americans?
Well, he started with the economy, and I disagree with Bakari. I mean, we're sitting in Washington, D.C. The mayor of Washington, D.C. said the National Guard helped lower crime and make people safer. So there's plenty of Democrats who've supported the president's efforts in those regards. And interestingly, when you flash forward to Abigail Spanberger started with 3 questions. One of them was, is this president keeping you safer? It was interesting. She asked 3 questions that I thought the answer to was all favorable to the president. She didn't touch the immigration issue, what you've asked about. And the president started, interestingly, something we don't hear very much. He started out with an emphatic embrace of legal immigration. And he made that point very clear. And I think we all knew he was going to move on to illegal immigration. But it's worth making that point. And having worked for him, I can tell you, he is extremely pro-legal immigration. But he has come into this second term, just as he said he would, and been more aggressive than any other president in our lifetimes in dealing with illegal immigration. And that sometimes has negative consequences. There'll never be a perfect policy. But he wanted to redraw that line tonight. And I think it's one of those 70-30 issues that differentiates the Republicans from the Democrats going into the midterm. And yes, it can be rough sometimes, but when you boil it down on concept, the people of this country are with the president on that issue.
Well, I think that Republicans probably feel more confident tonight because it wasn't an utter disaster. Like, he talked for the longest State of the Union he's ever given. And I wasn't like pulling my hair out of my head. And and you're laughing because you know it's true, because sometimes you pull your hair out of your head when your guy talks too. And that didn't happen tonight. And because of that, you take a little victory lap. But the reality is, most people probably didn't even watch the speech. They will see some clips. Your base will see the clips they want. My base will see the clips they want. And Americans still won't be able to afford the cost of living in this country. And until that changes, running down a laundry list of economic goods and bads just won't matter. People, we've already learned this lesson. It is really hard to change the way people feel day to day. And people feel, it's not just that they feel like they can't afford it. The stress that you live within your body when you're like, are my lights staying on? Am I gonna have enough gas to get to my kids' school to pick them up? That is real. That is exhausting. And so every day when you wake up a little more tired, and then you have to pull your hair out of your head because the president is talking crazy too the next day, tonight was a win, tomorrow won't be, people sometimes want to turn the page on that.
Yeah, Donald Trump has a genius for setting us against each other. And what that was a moment where he was asking people to choose between your neighbor who is a United States citizen and your neighbor or the person who drives your Uber or the roofer who did your house or whatever.
Good point.
Who's not a U.S. citizen. Most of us don't want to do that. And Donald Trump has done something I didn't think he would be able to do. He's lost his mojo on immigration. He was the strongest president and candidate and spokesperson for a certain approach to immigration, and he's upside down on it because we are a decent people, right? We don't want to see nannies tackled in the street, working men ripped out of their cars. We don't want to see more than 100 U.S. citizens arrested and incarcerated without even being read their rights, disappeared without access to lawyers. Any other president done that, there'd be impeachments. And I think he has succeeded in alienating people that he had in his pocket.
So I think you suggested that the Democrats didn't talk about immigration, but let me play what Abigail Spanberger said about the immigration issue, drawing a contrast between where Democrats are and where Trump are on this issue.
Our president told us tonight that we are safer because these agents arrest mothers and detain children. Think about that. Our broken immigration system is something to be fixed, not an excuse for unaccountable agents to terrorize our communities.
So first, my point was she led with 3 questions, and immigration wasn't one of the 3. So I heard her later comments.
But do you see what's happening here, which is that Trump, I think, would be winning if the contrast were just between his desire to rid the country of hardened criminals and Democrats doing nothing. But that's not actually what the contrast is here. The contrast is what we saw in Minneapolis. And that's what people are remembering. Alex Preddy and Renee Good, not mentioned today. Should he have brought them up?
No, I don't think he should have brought them up. And not from his perspective.
Well, why not, though? Why can you use the lives of some to score political points, but not use the lives of others? So my question is, why does Donald Trump get to determine the value of American lives?
He doesn't.
Well,
but
he did
Donald
tonight.
Trump does. No, Donald Trump gets to determine what Donald Trump says.
Well,
That's what Donald
I
Trump
think
gets
we're making
to
the same
determine.
point.
No, I don't think we're making anything near the same point on this, Bakari. The error rate for ICE under President Trump is 1/3 of the error rate under President Obama.
What do you mean by error rate? Are you meaning people
I'm
kill?
referring back to Terry's comment, for example, of picking up people who don't have a basis to be picked up. First of all, there have been 170, last time I looked, Americans arrested by ICE citizens. 130 plus of those were correct arrests. American citizens participate in illegal immigration,
do you agree?
including Renee Good. And that was an ugly, terrible situation.
Wait,
The comparison to Barack
You're
Obama
accusing
is
Renee Good of
false.
participating in illegal immigration?
Wait a minute.
I think
Wait a minute. Barack
Including
Obama
obstructing law enforcement.
There's a difference, but there's a difference between protest and what you're talking about. And I think also
right, and
that
obstructing and stalking
when we're
law
talking about people who are picked up by immigration officers, federal immigration officers, I think the U.S. citizens, that's an important point. But there are actually a lot of there's a broader universe of people who committed no crimes, people who are going to their green card interviews on they're at their final interview to get their green card, people who are here on a legal basis, they're refugees, they're asylum seekers, they have communication with the government that has given them work permits and said, you're in the process.
They're going to
That is
appointments.
part of look, at this point, I think Americans now are seeing the underbelly of what this can look like, what those mistakes look like. And that's why Trump is doing so poorly on this issue. And there was no acknowledgement of that in this speech. The trying to score political points, again, it seems like that works really well for the MAGA crowd. But the American people are basically saying, you told us you were going to go after criminals, and you're doing way more than that, and we don't like it.
But
I'll agree with you
goes
that-
beyond that.
I'll agree with you that this administration has needed a correction to focus a lot less on collaterals and a lot more on criminal, violent, illegal immigrants, which the president tonight did that in his speech. He said that he was going to focus on criminal, illegal immigrants. He also faulted the Democrats correctly for leaving the border open. He took credit for sealing the border. We've had virtually no crossers illegally since he became president. That's a major accomplishment because it was just a year ago Democrats assured us you could not do that unless you changed the law. And we did it by just changing the president.
And,
But
if he had
but
stopped
Brad-
there, it would be a different political
Yeah,
story.
exactly. That's the point, is that
Because nothing's happening and the successes happen.
No,
So it's not in the news.
No. I think if you would have stopped there, you would have been winning on this issue right now. I think when you start ripping nannies out of their homes, babies are getting detained. People don't like to see that. We already lived, let me just finish. We already lived through that in the first Trump administration. And that was when we saw babies in cages crying and your numbers started to take on immigration. So you are living a Groundhog's Day again because you're trying to get too cute on the issue. But the problem is the reason why Democrats didn't stand in that moment. Yes, I think every American citizen, including the Democrats in that chamber, believe that the first duty of elected officials is to protect American citizens. But the context in which that statement was made was that there was an ignoring of the life of an American citizen, Alex Preddy, and the ignoring of American citizen Renee Good, and that is what Ilhan Orban. That is what Ilhan Orban.
No. There's also the ignoring of the lives of Lake and Riley and people who have been victims. The full Democrats should stand for that sentence. Full stop. But they cannot give Donald Trump credit for anything.
No.
For anything. And they would be better off if
Brad,
they would.
You know this. I mean, Abby asked an amazing question, and Ken dodged it and said it was his prerogative. But I mean, if you were advising him, you would tell him to mention the names of Alex Preddy and Renee Good. The problem is that what we're not acknowledging is that Donald Trump cannot simply say 2 words or 3 words, which is, I messed up. Like, he cannot admit fault. Like the psychopathy in Donald Trump, and you talk about Democrats all the time. Well, let me diagnose Republicans. The psychopathy of Donald Trump is that he has a fundamental inability to admit fault. The fact is, ICE and Border Patrol killed Americans. They've ripped 5-year-olds out of their homes. They've ripped nannies out of their homes. They've ripped people who are everyday citizens. The difference between Donald Trump and Barack Obama is Barack Obama made a concerted effort against tier 1 hardened criminals, and he deported them from the country. Donald Trump has an inability to do that, and we
That is exactly what he said.
But you call them collateral.
Let me also
That's
let
a
me,
legal
You
term.
call them
It's a legal
collateral.
term.
let me also
It's a legal
play.
term.
Let me
It's a
also
legal
play
term.
another
That's what's in the
aspect of
report.
what the
Homeland
president
Security uses the
said
term.
today, and this is actually, I think, one of the moments that produced a reaction from some of the Democratic members on the other side of the aisle, and it has to do with the Somali fraud investigations in Minnesota.
The Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota remind us that there are large parts of the world where bribery, corruption, and lawlessness are the norm, not the exception. Importing these cultures through unrestricted immigration and open borders brings those problems right here to the USA. And it is the American people who pay the price in higher medical bills, car insurance rates, rent, taxes, and perhaps most importantly, crime. We will take care of this problem. We're going to take care of this problem. We are not playing games.
I think the thing I think about is if the president were talking about any other part of the world, he said, people from France, we can't import them here because their culture is incompatible with us. Wouldn't that be something that people said was pretty far across the line?
I mean,
he's calling Somali people pirates
Pirates.
based off of what exactly?
Well, there are
$19
pirates in
billion
Somalia.
fraud.
Actually, the only country left for piracy is a profession.
Hold on a second.
We're in America. You know how far Somalia is?
He said,
Halloween parties in Somalia is where you find pirates.
Hold on a second. He said the Somali pirates who ransacked Minnesota.
Yeah.
So he's describing Somali people just in general as pirates because there happen to be pirates in Somalia?
He's calling people who are raiding Medicaid funds illegally pirates, which I think that's actually a pretty good metaphor for what it means to set up a fraudulent daycare center and take money from Medicaid illegally.
Okay, so you are aware
acknowledge
that
a
at
white
least
woman
I was
was
just going to
over
say
the
that one of the
That
very,
one at
in
the
fact,
top of the fraud scheme was a
the
white
first person,
woman.
An Anglo,
the first person who was prosecuted.
woman.
Citizen, too.
Citizen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but
I
then-
mean,
pirate.
She should go to jail.
Is she a
should
pirate?
go to jail.
Yes.
The problem that I have is
hard.
Like,
Yeah,
I mean, what do you want?
but
Go ahead, I'm
let me
sorry.
just make a point because I think you're trying to there's a little bit of whitewashing happening here.
Literally, thank you,
because
Black History Month. Thank you.
because he's literally saying that they're importing a culture of bribery, corruption, and lawlessness. Is that what's actually happening here, or are there individuals
Yes.
who are criminals and should be prosecuted? Is this an indictment on an entire culture of people?
He wants to make it indictment. He really hates Somalia. I think we can say that we can agree on that. He hates that place. I think he hates it partly because one of their citizens is in the United States Congress. Somebody who was born there is in the United States Congress, and infuriates him. He hates Somalia. You can feel it. It comes off of him. But the notion that the 66,000 people of Somali descent who live in Minnesota are responsible for what happened in the fraud cases is bigoted. It's racist, and I think that's what people sense.
But I also doubt he could even point Somalia out on a map. Or,
Oh, come on.
I mean,
it just, you're getting pretty far afield.
So that's
that was disrespectful.
That's a red line for you. That's a red line for you, not the president maligning an entire
What's the red line?
country of people. Especially, let's also be clear that the Somali population in Minnesota, a majority of them are Americans. So, I mean, I guess my question to you is, are you okay with the president painting with a broad brush an entire culture of people? Is that what we do as Americans?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm glad you said it.
Yeah, we did it to the Irish. We did it to the Sicilians. We're still doing it to black
You know
people.
what it's called, though?
All right.
This is what.
Okay, well,
You
let's
know that
let's
it's in law.
all right, let's
You know that it's in
let's
law?
put it
It's
on the
actually
table.
not.
It is in law.
That's why-
and it's
All right,
and
Ken,
the
put
word
it on the table.
values is used. Look, I
this
ran
home
the
deeper.
legal immigration agency. This was supposed to be part of the vetting process.
So when we
You
look back
cannot-
on
Well,
American
well,
history
let
and
me-
we look
let
back
me
at
finish.
how
We don't
Italian
just take
Americans
everybody.
and Catholics were treated and Jews were treated, you think that that's justified because culture is a valid reason to decide whether someone ought to have a chance to be an American or not?
No, and you've connected things that aren't connected.
How is that not connected?
So
our
the-
immigration
I'll tell
system
you
used
how.
to
I'll tell you
our
how, if
immigration
you'll let me.
system used to legally discriminate against Catholics, Italians, Jews, Irish, you name it.
I'm familiar.
Okay, under the guise of culture. You're saying it's fine for the Somalis. Is it fine for those groups of people too?
No. We're a Western nation. Our foundation is a Judeo-Christian Western civilization philosophy.
Built on slavery. Finish the sentence.
Those
And indigenous land.
those cultures fit in this country, and they and by, when I say fit, I mean values fit.
Which cultures?
Similarly Western cultures.
White.
Chinese Americans out. Japanese Americans
No,
out.
wait,
Arab
wait, wait,
Americans
wait,
out.
wait a
Here
minute.
they are.
them do,
Here they
man.
are.
Sometimes
Most of
Because
this
they're-
entire hemisphere
they're-
isn't white.
But
Don't
they're,
throw a
no, they're
lightsaber.
here. It's not about white. We have lost confidence. It seems the Republican Party.
Well, no,
has
no,
lo-
this
has
is-
lo-
look, this is something that
this
won't
bugging
be
me.
confronted.
The Republican Party seems to have lost faith in the revolutionary ideal of this country. That it doesn't matter the color of your skin or what country ever your color of your
No,
hair.
that is not true.
Our
That is not
ideals
true.
make American.
But a country
not
like
not some
Somalia
culture.
or Syria or Afghanistan, you cannot vet individuals coming from those countries. You cannot do it.
So hold
It
on.
can't
wait,
be
wait, wait.
done.
You just you just
And so
I don't want you,
I
but yeah,
land
but
in the
you're,
place
but you're shifting
of favoring
you're shifting it now
protection,
because you were
including
saying
against the
before
culture.
you were saying before that it was about culture. Now you're saying it's about vetting. So if it's about culture and it's about who's Western enough for you, to Terry's point, are we then saying that if you are from India, you are from China, you're from South Korea, you're just not Western enough? Your culture is
No.
not compatible with this country.
No,
Is that
that's
the
not,
principle?
that is not what American law says, and that's
Okay,
not what.
so
Go back to
again,
the speech.
I'm
Wait a
trying to
minute.
understand how you all are trying to justify.
Wait a minute.
But Brad's not in that
justify.
same hole.
the-
Don't
I don't want.
put
Okay, I don't
Brad in that hole.
put Brad
All
in
right, I'm
there.
gonna
I
defend
apologize,
as your lawyer,
Brad.
Brad.
I don't
I'm
want to
gonna
push
say
you.
that. Don't.
But listen. Okay, listen. We do have to take a quick break. We got it.
On the other side of this,
trust me,
Brad,
Brad.
defend yourself.
We got a lot to continue the conversation on. We will get to it. I promise. After a quick break, we'll be right back.